Hey, this is Mr. C, and you've tuned in to the latest math video, 4-2 solving addition and subtraction equations. Once you're done with this page, please unpause the video. Man, we're grooving today. Alright, now you can check your homework. Alright, we gotta stop grooving. Time to teach. Hopefully you enjoy a sound intro that is called Lights by Ellie Goulding. It's the Bass Nectar remix. Zooming in. Alright, so we're solving addition and subtraction equations. We're going to ask this question. How can you get a variable alone in an addition equation? George had X plastic figures, so we don't know how many he had. After he bought 7 more figures, he had 25. How many plastic figures did George have before he bought more? So sometimes you'd have to write your own equation. This time they give you it, but it's X plus 7, so this is how many he had first, plus how many he got, equals 25. And we want to know, how many did he have before he bought more? Okay, so we're trying to find X in this situation. Alright, so I wanted to draw a picture of the problem down here to have you think about, how would you find out what he started with? Well, he had what he started with. He got 7 more, and he ended up with this big block of 25 action figures. Well, I'm thinking in my head, well, all I got to do is take away that 7 action figures that he added from, X plus. Well, I'm going to take away that 7, which means that I would also lose 7 on this side. And then I would find out how much he had to begin with. And so we're going to talk about what that's called today. So, as I was saying, how can I get X alone on one side of the equation, X plus 7? And by X alone, they're just saying, how can I figure out that question of how many did he start with? Okay, so we're going to talk today about operations that undo each other. And they have an inverse relationship. That will be our vocab word. That will be after this example. And the clue word is Chewbacca. And subtracting 7 is the inverse of adding 7. What do they mean by that? Okay, well, inverse, okay, they undo each other. That must mean opposite. That must mean the opposite. And so I'm going to look, as I said before, we have X, and we had this plus 7 right here. Well, if I take away that plus 7, which I'm going to do the inverse, which we said is subtracting 7, if I subtract 7 from this side, well, we talked last lesson about if you do anything on this side, if you want it to remain equal, you must remove the same amount, that's the key word, from both sides. And so I see here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We're removing 7 from this side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We're removing 7 from this side. So we are following the subtraction property of equality here. When you remove something from one side and from the other, it will remain equal. And so then we're going to find out what X was before they added 7. And so here we have it, and if I counted these blocks, I would get X equals 18. And here's the word version of what I was saying. So here's what I would write. We start with this problem right here, X plus 7 equals 25, and we talked about the subtraction property of equality. And when you subtract 7 from both sides, then it will remain equal. And the whole reason why we're subtracting 7, I see, is that they added 7, and we're trying to do the inverse of that, the opposite, and that's going to subtract 7 to both sides. Remember, if you do 1 to one side, you must do it to the other. So I get X equals 18. You might realize that when you do the inverse of anything, plus 7 and minus 7, it ends up just completely canceling out, and there's just X. So, and also another thing we're going to talk about today is how you check your answer. You just substitute your answer back in. So 18 goes back in for X. And I see instead of an X, there's an 18 here. 18 plus 7 equals 25. Is that true? Yes, it is. That means I got the right answer. And that's awesome. You should feel good about yourself. We're going to move on. So here are vocab notes. You can pause your video right now. Make sure that you have inverse relationships. I would recommend that underlined, the definition, and these examples right here. You could put them in a box if you wanted to. Moving on. Here's example 1. I know that example 1 Mr. C is going to do, but there's also things that you need to copy. And I'm going to tell you exactly what you need in your notes until the end of this or sometime in the middle. continuing on, how can I get the variable alone in a subtraction equation? So we're always trying to solve for the variable. Last time it was how many action figures. This time they don't tell me what it means. But we have x minus 19 and 1/10 equals 34 and 4/10. So how can I get x alone on one side of the equation? X minus 19 plus 0.1 equals 34.4. Well, remember we talked about inverse. So we're going to do the inverse of minus 19.1. I'm wondering, what do you think that is? Well, we want to undo it, and that is adding 19.1. That's the inverse. And I want you to notice how we're going to do it to both sides. Now we're going to move our eyes down here, and you're going to do it to both sides. Plus 19.1 plus 19.1. Well, how did they get x alone? Well, look right here. Minus 19.1 plus 19.1. Those will cancel out because those are called inverses. X equals 53.5. And we're always going to check our answer. So we're going to substitute 53.5 for x. And if you ever think I'm going too fast in a problem, then you should pause the video. You could rewind, you could listen to it again. That's very valuable. That's why it's in the video format, so that you can choose how fast it goes. So wherever there's an x, I'm going to put 53.5 because I got that as my answer over here. So 53.5 minus 19.1, that should equal 34.4, and it does. Therefore, I did correctly do my inverse here. I correctly solved what x would be, and that's very exciting. Now, what do I need to write for the problem? Please write everything in what you write down here. Moving on in 3, 2, 1. Here's example 2. I see that there are multiple problems here, and so you're going to get to pick to do 2 of them. Please pick to do 1 up here and 1 down here, and then we'll check our answers. If you prefer to do all 4 for practice, feel free to do that because I will go over all 4. Alright, so here are your answers for example 2. If you would like me to explain how to do these, I'm about to do that right now. So pause the video. I'm going to move on in 3, 2, 1. So let's explain the first 2 for example 2. First, I'm going to explain example 1. If you only want to watch a specific number, just go through the video and wait till I circle the number just like that, and that's when I'm going to start explaining that one. So I see that I have 25 plus m. Well, I want to get m by itself, and that means I want to do the opposite or the inverse of whatever's on the same side. If they don't have a symbol here, if they don't have, a plus or a minus in front of a number, and that comes first, just know that it is plus. And so if I'm trying to do the inverse of that, that's on the same side as m, well, I want to do the opposite, so I'm going to subtract 25. And I'm thinking, oh, I need to do that to both sides. That's why my answer is subtract 25 from both sides, because I'm doing the inverse of positive 25. Now we're going to explain number 2. So I see t, and I see minus 40.5. Well, I know that I'm going to do the inverse of minus 40.5, which is add 40.5. I mean, why am I doing this? I'm trying to get t by itself. All right, what am I going to write over here? I'm also going to write plus 40.5, because anything you do on one side must be done on the other. It doesn't actually ask for the answer. It just says explain how to get the variable alone, and this would give the variable alone because on this side you just have a t, this side you just have an m. Moving on. So how do I do 3 and 4? I'm circling 3. That means I'm going to start that right now. So solve each equation. So they don't really want you to explain, they just want you to solve it. Okay, so I see x, and on the same side of the equal sign is minus 11. I know that I'm going to do the inverse of that. Inverse of subtraction, plus 11. So I got x on this side. Make sure to not just bring this down and make it 12. That is not correct. Because if we want to keep things equal, you got to do it to both sides. The same amount to both sides. That's what we learned in the first lesson. So then we get x equals 23. Right here, we know that there's no symbol here, positive or negative, so we know it's plus, and we're going to do the opposite of that. So we're going to subtract 13.3 and subtract the same amount to both sides. And we're going to have to use our skills of decimal subtracting. And we get 9.4 equals x. Moving on to the next. For independent or partners practice, it is in the video again. Please do these three problems, you need to explain how to get the variable alone in each equation, and then show your work for each one. The answers are coming in 3, 2, 1. Here are your answers right here for the problems. That's what you should have had written, and you should also have the work as well. Now please choose from these three options down below. The group game answers are coming in 3, 2, 1. Here are the group game answers for 4-2. Make sure you pick the right folder. Thank you for watching this video, and you are awesome.